Okay, so welcome to Tuesday, 16th of March, Critical Thinking. This will be lecture number 9. Okay? Why is there not a heading for this one? Okay, we're presenting. Hello, everyone. All good? There it is. I knew there was a heading. Okay, Critical Thinking, lecture number 9. So I suggest you pay attention today because today we're doing assessment for the midterm. And it will be about this. Critical thinking can have different meanings. What is it to be critical? Now, I don't think when they designed this course, anyone really knew. I hope no one knew. Actually, I hope we can decide. Really, you're going to do this or not? Everyone ready? Try to do that too. It's big. Crazy for university to have to do that. Today I want you to tell me what is critical thinking. What do I want you to tell me today? So like if you're not paying attention, and then I ask you, okay, so remember the first question, that is the assignment for today, your half-term assessment, what will you do? You won't know, you'll have missed it. I don't like to repeat myself. Okay, how many people read about, knew about, know about Fukushima? Fukushima, what is Fukushima? Okay, it sounds like it's in Japan, right? I'll give you that clue. What does it refer to? What is the big thing that happened in Fukushima? Anyone? Anyone? Fukushima? Fukushima was 4 nuclear power plants, 3 of which were destroyed by the tsunami in Igamashi. There was terrible scenes on television, and well, a couple of days, but 3 days later, the water had come into the nuclear reactor. And because of the nature of the technology of the nuclear reactor, those reactors went critical. That's what they said. The reactor went critical, which means danger. It's critical, it means it could explode. Okay? So, what is critical thinking? What is critical thinking? Like Fukushima, it should make your brain explode. I wish there was something like that. Going critical. That's what they talked about in Fukushima. Can education be critical? Why is education critical? And in the current conjuncture, doesn't really help. All right, this word conjuncture maybe needs some work. Any idea what conjuncture means? The current conjuncture. So as sociologists, one of your tasks is to be able to talk about, be able to write and understand any particular thing. I don't know what. The family, cartoons, books, in the context of several things that you'll give to help explain that thing. You want to explain some process, you want to explain some text, you want to explain some event, you need to put it into a context to help explain it. And the way we talk about that context, during a lecture at the university, it's really critical that you pay attention. If you want to pass, if you're trying to explain something, you put it in a context, just like that. The context in which you are having a conversation, looking for something in your work, is you are in university. That doesn't explain much. You are in university getting an education. That's one. You are of a certain age. That's another context. Maybe because you are talking about the power of a teacher in this situation, which in my case obviously is not much, because I can't get you to shut up. You will talk about the context of the classroom. So the conjuncture is the arrangement or the convergence of several different things. Class, education, university, grumpy teacher, hot day. Alright? All these things together can explain why these people in the back row cannot stop talking. That explains it. So many different contexts. You're in the university, you're doing education, you don't care about it much. Situation for young, wealthy students have time to not pay attention to their education. All of these things together help to explain why something is happening. And we call this the conjuncture. It means several contexts are coming together. Right, for the situation of Vietnam, let's say. Vietnam, and maybe what's an important thing about Vietnam? Vietnam's economic situation, the growth rate of 4% or something. 4% growth rate. How to explain this? We need to understand the global economy. We need to understand labor context. We need to understand government intervention, government role. We need to understand nationalism, history, consequences of war and colonialism. All right, so war, colonialism, government role, history, global economy, labor, all of these are contexts. And when we say the current conjuncture, it's where we think we are in all of these things, how they come together right now. It's different to what it was 15 years ago, or 25 years ago. Right? But what to say about being critical in the current conjuncture? Right now, Vietnam is a regional player in ASEAN. It just finished put in place the role as head of ASEAN. They call it secretary, something like that. It wants to increase regional trade. Why can this economy do well right now? Because Vietnam has low labor costs. That's part of the current conjuncture. Labor in Vietnam is not so expensive compared to other places in Asia and other places in the world. Thinking about the stuff we were saying about science parks last night, special economic zone last week, special economic zone, science park and so on. The government is inviting companies to come to Vietnam to take advantage of a few things. The development of special economic zone, but also low labor costs, government enthusiasm for technology transfer. These are the ways in which sociologists talk about the current conjuncture. In the special economic zones, companies come, they benefit from low taxation, special health visa exemptions. I've just been filling out my form for tax reduction or visa exemption because foreign staff can do that. There's a lot of discussion in ASEAN right now about how Vietnam has little labor unrest. That's a debatable thing. Maybe you hear a lot about micro strikes. Another part of the context is the introduction in Vietnam of ILO labor regulation. And very soon the development of independent trade unions. Let's not get into that. These are things that we can debate about the current conjuncture. And each of these issues is part of going critical. Vietnam right now is in a position, it's like in the metaphor of Fukushima, reaching critical mass. And almost like in this current conjuncture, we could say, Vietnam can either really succeed or not take off. Right? Depending on whether the government gamble that technology will transfer, whether the possibility of low wages will remain low enough relative to other countries while Vietnam moves from process production to high-tech production. Right, and this could work or might not. What happens when an economy is moving from low-tech production to high-tech production? Wages go up as well. What do you do with increasing wages? People in Vietnam so far have been investing in education. What are we investing in Vietnam? We can talk about that as a current conjunction. People invest in property, they are starting small businesses, and they are sending their children to university more and more. These are crucial factors in the current conjuncture. Now, if you go to university, you get a degree, you're doing it, your family is sending you because they want you to have a successful career and good job. That really means to not be one of the low-paid workers. The aspiration for education logically means that the cost of labor will be increasing. More people go to university, more people will need higher wage jobs. They want higher wage jobs. And if it's successful, if this system is successful, they'll get that. All right, there are other wider factors that might make Vietnam's gamble of changing its economy from a low-wage produce-making economy to a high-tech instrument-making economy. And those factors might be environment, regional trade, age of the population. Do you know what the average age of Vietnam is? Vietnam's population? Right now? Anyone? Any of you demographers know what demographer is? All right, demography. Our teacher, Mr. Nyan, he is a demographer. He studies the age of the population. How many people and how old are they? Vietnam has a very young population. Very young. And one critical thing, when you have a young population, if they can only move into low-wage production jobs, they will become peasants and so on. You get stuck in low, underdeveloped. But if they move into education and there is sufficient investment by government and business, in especially economic zone and so on, in new technology, new businesses, the people who go to university, and the majority of a large number of the young people, and add to the prosperity of the nation. If you look at demography, look at the population of Japan. 20 years after the war, World War II, it decimated Japan. There were many young Japanese, right? Especially males. There was a population boom. Lots and lots of children. And in the 1960s, Japan made an economic gamble. It moved into low-wage mass production, and they produced copies of products from the West in large number. But they also made an investment in technology. To transfer that technology that was coming up in the West to Japan was their main ambition. And they did it by offering the world cheap labor. It's a gamble. You say to the company, we will work cheaply for you, but you tell us how you show us how you do things. And then the Japanese economy boomed in the 1960s and 1970s because they started to no longer just do cheap production for international companies, but they started to innovate and invent their own production. What is the biggest number one thing in, say, economic spheres that Japan succeeded in doing in the 60s and 70s? What are they best known for? It's electronics. The reason there was a demographic boom, and the reason they increased the numbers of Japanese young people not working in farming or low-wage jobs, because in the special economic zone, or in the industrial sectors, they were successful in electronics. What's the number one symbol of their success? You know, I bet you none of you you're not old enough to even have had that one. You didn't have a Sony Walkman? No. Sony was a Japanese company working in something like a special economic zone, producing electronic goods that were copies from the West. They had a smaller company called Ibanez, which made guitars, and I had one of their guitars. And it was like cheap, not well made, cheap copy. But they were learning about electronics. They were learning the system. And then they came up with something that revolutionized electronics and the music industry. The Sony Walkman. I wonder if you even know what this was like. Can anyone tell me what is a Sony Walkman? Can you tell me what is a Sony Walkman? You all have one in your pocket now. Well, sort of. The child and the child and the child of a Sony Walkman. Sony Walkman? You're right. Do you know what a Sony Walkman is? Do you know what a Sony Walkman is? Sony Walkman. No idea. Anyone? Do you know what a Sony Walkman is? Sony Walkman, this one. So, when I was young, if we wanted to listen to pop music, the Rolling Stones, we had to listen to a thing called the radio. Maybe by the late 70s, mid-70s, TV and music as well. We made cassette tapes, which we played in cassettes, but these big little boom box. And you would record your songs off the radio, record them, and then carry them swap them with your friends. The critical moment for the Japanese economy and the electronic economy was when they came up looking at the conjuncture of the music industry, the electronics industry, and the youth boom worldwide. They invented the Sony Walkman. And the Walkman was a little device you could clip to your belt with headphones, and you could listen to music while you were walking. No radio, nothing. For the first time. It was still recorded, but it was the first version of what you now have on your phone. It's not a phone, it's not a computer. The part that, what's it called, Spotify, right, or something like that. The MP4, yeah? The second or third generation Sony Walkman, no, I think fourth or fifth generation Sony Walkman, but also, it was digital, it also had MP4s, and suddenly, because of memory, you could carry maybe in your pocket 200 songs. 200 songs, amazing! Previously, you could only have 7 or 12 on a cassette, 90 minutes. 90 minutes you could have on one cassette. So you listen to it and listen to it and listen to it over and over. But then, with the Sony Walkman, 200 songs. And then within 2 years, 2,000 songs. How many songs do you have on your phone? More than 1,000. So young people 25 years ago didn't have this. No, 40 years ago. 25. 40 years ago. Many? More than 1,000. But you can have 10,000 now. And if you had an iPhone, what's it called? An iPlayer, you could put all of your music on there. So what happened? The Japanese economy moved into electronic production of something that the whole world wanted, and salaries started to rise. They also did computers, musical instruments, and then cars. Toyota, right? From Nagoya City in Japan. Japan looked like this a little bit. And Nagoya is right here, the biggest port, manufacturing port, special economic zone in the world. Because of Toyota. And the salary men of Japan, their salary went up. But the demographic changed for various factors. Health. If you are wealthy, you live longer, right? The age demographic of Japan increased. The Japanese people were famous for living long. And now the population and the economy is stagnant. Which means that drive and innovation that's really critical. You have more people coming into university and they desire to do well, get a good job. The Japanese lost that edge in the 1990s and their economy kind of stalled. It's still a strong economy. The number 3 or 4 in the world. But it's not as exciting, not as energetic, not as critical mass as it was in the 60s. Who has that critical mass now? China? Pretty much. Vietnam is at that point just before Japan took off, right? We are looking for something like a sonic boom. Something that will be the emblematic, new, supercharged economic thing that will flip the economy from low-wage mass production to high-tech elite production that the world wants. What do you need for that? What is the conjuncture of forces you need for that? You need a critical mass of people who are driven to get education, whose parents are making them go to school. They need to get good teaching. They need to have that drive to think outside the box and to innovate. And I don't mean innovate like propaganda, innovate like, innovative company. That's crap. To really think of something new. Without that thing, that set of innovations that the world will want to grab, the gamble will not work, because at present, high levels of education are based on the fact that most of the economy is low wage. And the technical transfer that is desired is coming to Vietnam because Vietnam can give low-wage workers to those big companies. If too many people get education without that takeoff that Japan had, there won't be jobs for those people. Something will happen like happened in Taiwan. Taiwan moved to a high educated economy. Quite successful. They invested in science parks, just like Vietnam's doing now. But the area that they thought would be their Sony Walkman was precision instruments. But the world hasn't taken that up. So Taiwan no longer does mass production of plastic stuff, trying to keep their economy on. When I grew up, instead of made in China, everything was made in Korea or made in Taiwan. Taiwan doesn't do that cheap labor anymore. Every worker in Taiwan expects a high level, high standard of living, a high wage. But the global companies are not so enthusiastic to go there because they don't get a good deal. And Taiwan is not inventing new things. Yes. Korea, on the other hand, South Korea, not North Korea. South Korea, there are two Koreas. Koreans forget. Can you believe it? South Korea was following Japan maybe 10 or 15 years later, also had a demographic boom. Lots of people came into education. The wages were low, companies came in, and some companies from Korea were able to really catch up. What are the big things from Korea? Automobile and motorcycle. Also some electronics. Their economy still strong. A bit slowed down. Not sure what will happen with the demographic. Vietnam is about here. At the critical point, if the science works, if the special economies are, if that kind of flip from low wage economy to high wage, high tech economy doesn't work, we won't get jobs. I don't mean you this class, this class will probably get jobs, but those coming into education. The more and more coming into education, right? This, the larger section of the population go into and they pay for education. Will you get a payment back? Only if the country lifts out of that low wage economy and can play in the international market. That's why being the head of ASEAN is so important for the current government. It needs to be able to sell its product regionally and globally. Now, other things affect this. Environmental crisis, COVID. There are so many factors that are part of the current conjuncture that affect critical mass. We have a critical mass of possible things, but some factors, environment, COVID, wars, bad economic decisions by government, or interference from another government, Trump, for example, gone, so maybe he's lucky. Other factors that could affect this trajectory, and we don't yet know. What I mean is there's a pivot moment. Right, and the science park, the special economic zone is a part of that, a really crucial part of that. I guess we could think of, why is this critical? Why is this moment critical? Like Fukushima critical? We can think about this in the context of COVID. One of the things that Vietnam has been selling to the global market and spending a lot of time trying to be very innovative about to find ways to market and sell Vietnam. Tourism. Right, one of the big growth areas for the Vietnam economy was tourism. How many people came to Vietnam in 2019? We all know the number, right? Yeah? Do you know how many people came? International tourists visited Vietnam in 2019? Wow. 7 million. That's what they say, 7 million international tourists. In 2019, in 2020, how many in 2020? Oh, none. Well, some in January, February. But in most of 2020, no international tourists. What happened to the economy? Our tourism economy boomed. Despite the government made an effort. What did he say? Vietnam, something like that. Doing it, Vietnam. Visit Vietnam. That was a tourism slogan, right? But domestic consumption of tourism is not enough to replace the international market. Because the population salary is not the national salary is not high enough to allow everyone to do tourism. If the domestic salary was higher, maybe there's a balance. Maybe the tourist industry could survive on domestic travel. But there's not really enough. Not to replace the 7 million and the dollars that they bring. Vietnam has been very good at branding sites. You know, in the online tourism market, buying package tours, you have to sell a certain kind of image. Pristine beaches, beautiful beach huts or something like that, or mountains, or attractions. A big bridge that is in the shape of two hands holding up a road, like that one near the hand. Or good museums. You need to brand and sell your product. But something like COVID can interrupt that, even though the tourism companies do a fantastic job, very competitive worldwide. I mean, pictures of Vietnamese beaches are better than any beaches in the world. The actual beaches, some are not as beautiful as the photographs, right? Because of pollution and so on. If you've been to Phu Quoc looks fantastic in pictures, but some of the beaches are pretty good. But they've done a fantastic job of marketing and linking individual tourists to sites using new technology and things like ecotourism, health tourism, even medical tourism. Right? And they link them up using new electronic communication softwares. That's something in the conjuncture. The current conjuncture includes something like COVID, and that destroyed that. Maybe this will come back. If people can get the jab, if the government will decide that maybe we can have a vaccine passport and international tourists can come to Phu Quoc or from now somewhere can be contained, the tourism economy can open up. This is very critical, very different sense of critical, right? What I've been talking about previously. Now, in Marx, there's a concept called the general intellect. By this concept, Marx really means what the world means knowledge, world knowledge. The general intellect is what everyone could possibly access as know-how. And what Vietnam wants to do is bring international companies to transfer some of this know-how to its companies and then make a contribution. To be a successful economy, you really need to have the biggest slice of the general intellect. You need the latest techniques, the best technology, the best efficient, innovative use of social media to sell your product, because you're in competition. Even if you have fantastic, beautiful beaches and happy people and all that very attractive, if you don't have the means to sell it in the current marketplace, you cannot compete. What is the government afraid of in tourism right now? What's the biggest number one threat, critical threat to the tourist economy right now? Anyone? Think about this, okay? Imagine yourself as a member of the government. You are in charge of tourism. You do a threat assessment. What's the biggest threat right now in the current conjuncture to the tourist economy? COVID has decimated the economy, but you hope that it will recover. But it might not. If the country doesn't open to international tourism early enough, all those international tourists might go to Thailand. Thailand is opening to international tourists in June. And it's putting the pressure on. The Vietnamese government has to make a decision. Will it open the country to tourism? Because the critical thing is there are 7 million people or more in the world who would come to Vietnam. They haven't been for 1 year. They might, not all of them, they might just want a holiday somewhere. If Thailand opens, they are in competition in Vietnam. There's selling beaches, temples, museums, and so on. And the government knows very well. Indonesia is another possible competitor, but interestingly, Indonesia has much more COVID. They didn't deal as well with COVID, so they won't open soon. But Thailand was more like Vietnam, and they will open in June. This is critical. So you're thinking in the government, you're thinking at what point? We have to open. Maybe not June, but soon enough not to lose the advantage. Japan has a place called Abashiri on Hokkaido Island. They want to open the two ends of Japan. The other one is called Okinawa. Okinawa has beaches, Hokkaido has museum, cities, forests, national park, and a Christian museum. Those two may open. But Japan is thinking about targeting the same kind of tourist model as Vietnam, that Vietnam would need to access. But those Americans, those English, those Australians who want to do tourism, they don't really make a big distinction between Thailand and Vietnam. And of course they do a bit, but in the sense of just get away from home where you'll be locked up for 12 months, any place we're going to do. And Japan can use the same marketing tools, the same tourism marketing tools that Vietnam can use, that Thailand can use. But actually, Vietnam's marketing tools for tourism are a bit better. Branding is more effective. But at present, the industry is closed, the workers are laid off, and they didn't get compensation, so it will take some time to get that critical mass operating again. So it's a critical moment because of the current conjuncture. That's why I stressed at the beginning, conjuncture. You have to understand so many different factors. To understand what is happening with the economy, you need to understand tourism, health, education, global economy, regional economy. So here's the test question for Vietnam. Will the pivot to a high-tech economy work? My prediction, well, I didn't make a prediction, but my prediction, you wouldn't care much, you should probably, is that the weird thing is Vietnam might succeed because China is such a force. And globally, people are more suspicious of China than Vietnam, which is weird. But Americans, though they came for colonial power, occupied a war, they feel more inclined to do a deal with Vietnam than with China right now. We'll see. education and saw what has happened in other economies. You can look, I always use the example of India. But India has also tried to invest in an economy that will become high-tech, including a massive expansion of education. But what's the big difference between India and Vietnam in terms of the economy? India is 1.2 billion people. If those 1.2 billion people had sufficient income, the critical mass is there for their domestic tourism to be much bigger than anything else. They can sell to their own. India is more like Europe and it is like one country. Vietnam has to rely on outside Vietnam for its economy. That's a fact. That's why ASEAN is so important. We will say ASEAN is critical to the prospect of Vietnam, to the possible success of Vietnam. Okay. 2 minutes, we're going to take a break. And after the break, I send you an assignment. I will write on the board the assignment. It will be quite complex. And it will change. I'm not 100% sure what it will be, but it will change over the next hour. But the first thing I want you to start thinking of, what does critical thinking, what does it look like? If you saw it, would you recognize it? I don't think there's an obvious answer. I don't think there's an answer. There's no correct answer. But what do you think, and what do you think yourself, right? You can talk to each other about it, but I promise you, if one person gets the idea and everyone goes, oh, must be something like that, that's not the best way to go about it. The best way to go about it is have your own different way. But what does, if I ask you to draw me right now, critical thinking, does anyone do it? That's not what I'm going to ask, but that's the sort of problem that I want to try and address. What does critical thinking look like? If you saw the film that 2 weeks ago, I showed you online, there was a film from a class where we tried to draw social change. And everyone drew a kind of narrative. Social change was like a step-by-step thing. Because you can't draw change. The drawing is static in time. Well, you can maybe make a film, a narrative about social change. But social change, it was very difficult to work out how to picture it. The same problem with critical thinking. This concept has no real content. So how could we show it? I want you to do that. Think about that anyway during the break. Afterwards, I'll write some more things on the board to make suggestions. Okay, so 10-minute break.
And that's the end of the lecture today, because the second part is going to be the test. There's no point in recording that. Stop recording. Okay.